Hey everybody, what's up? I am back. It's been a long time since I made a video. I have just been focusing on some things, and as you can see, I have no hair. I shaved it all off, so a little bit of a new look for me. But I've been gone for a little while. It's been a while since I made a video because I was taking some time to just focus on my PhD and just making sure that I put all that research together and finish up that whole project. But now that I have finished a lot of that work, I'm just here to talk about some of the books I've read in the meantime. I obviously haven't, been producing a lot of content, but I still have been reading. I've just been taking the content aspect and putting that to the side while I focus on other stuff. But today I've got some of the, specifically 5 books that I really enjoyed while I was gone. 5 books right here I'll be talking about in this video. Just to give a recommendation for some of the books that I really enjoyed while I was on this little content hiatus. Before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you're someone who's enthusiastic about books, subscribe to this channel. If you know someone who likes books, let them know about this channel. And if you like this video at the end, give it a thumbs up. So the first book that I want to talk about today is a book by an author I really like named Robert Greene. His book, The Laws of Human Nature. This is a pretty decent sized book, like over 500 pages, but it's really, really good. If you are someone who is interested in human psychology, the laws of human nature, obviously human nature. If you're interested in human beings and why we behave the way that we behave and, certain things like that. This is a book that I would definitely recommend. In total, in this book, there are 18 laws of human nature that he talks about. This is the same guy who wrote the 48 Laws of Power. I haven't read that book. It's on my to-read list for the future. But I have read one of his books called Mastery, which was really good. And this is the second book I've read by him, and I'm becoming a big fan of this author. Some of the laws that he talks about in this book are seeing through people's masks, master your emotional self, confront your dark side, change your circumstances by changing your attitude, know your limits, seize the historical moment. But yeah, this book was a book I really enjoyed. One of the things I like about this book is, granted, maybe if you're not really into biographies or history, this might not be something you would enjoy in this aspect, but one thing I liked about this book is he doesn't just talk about these laws. He begins every chapter with an example of someone in history, giving a slight, a semi-little biography of this person and how they encompassed one of the laws of human nature that he's talking about. And so that was one thing that I really liked about it, where you get to read about someone in history who kind of encompassed this law, and then you jump right in and he explains how this law manifests itself in us or in people that we meet. This is definitely the kind of book that's going to help you understand certain people that you come across in your life, whether it's some kind of a narcissist, whether it's somebody who has a fragile ego in some sense. This book's going to give you a lot of insight into how people operate and how people work, and it's going to equip you with some tools to understanding people throughout your life. So of all the books I'm probably going to talk about today, this is my favorite one. This is the one I would recommend the most in general. So if you're looking for a really good book on humanity, human beings, human nature, I highly, highly recommend this one. Great book, great author. Check it out. So the next book on this list is Calling BS, The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World. So essentially, as this book talks about in this little title, we're currently living in a time in history where there's lots of data available. There's lots of statistics, lots of research that tries to understand the world. And a lot of the times, it's a good thing when someone backs up their opinion about life or backs up their, idea about the world with data, with evidence that supports the position, rather than just throwing out some idea with no foundation, no backing to it. But even though we're living in a time where there's lots of data and lots of statistics to try to understand how something works or try to understand some issue, the problem is that a lot of the times data and statistics can become misrepresented. And no matter what you believe, no matter what your political or your current affair opinions are, this is a book that is going to be really good for you to read. It's going to allow you to cut through the BS, to actually be able to identify BS when someone presents it to you. Because a lot of the time in the modern world, people will even present data of BS. They'll give you some BS opinion, and they'll provide evidence and data or statistics. And a lot of the times you actually have to be able to understand when BS is being wrapped up nice and neatly in flawed data and flawed statistics. Now, by no means does this mean that when someone provides you with data and statistics, you should just immediately say, this is BS. Obviously, having data and statistics to support your opinions is overall a very good thing. But we also have to be skeptical, because not every single opinion that is presented with data and statistics is actually valid. Sometimes it's actually worthy of critical scrutiny and skepticism. And so this book actually provides you with a lot of insight into how you can identify BS when you come across it, even when there's data and statistics that are being presented with that BS. Check it out if you're interested in learning how you can spot BS when you come across it in the world, and some useful tips to help you accomplish that task. The next book is The Science of Storytelling: Why Stories Make Us Human and How to Tell Them Better. This is actually a really interesting book. As you know from this channel, I love stories. I love great works of fiction, whether they're in novels or whether they're in films, plays. There's all different ways in which we consume stories in the modern day. And when you look at stories, they're worldwide. There's not a single culture that's not telling some kind of story in some kind of way, whether it's ancient mythologies, religions have stories. Pretty much in every single religion, they use stories to communicate certain important spiritual or human points. There are stories in history that become important to the national identity. And then there's obviously just fictional stories like, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or, Game of Thrones or, many different stories that we come across in our life that resonate with lots of people and become very important and very precious to us as we go throughout our lives, because we identify with characters, we identify with struggles, and it becomes something, very important to us. And that story ends up having a very special place in our heart. And so this book really unpacks the science behind storytelling, why humans find stories so interesting, why humans develop stories, and why they tend to resonate with us so much. And it specifically does this from a scientific perspective. For example, a lot of this is the psychology of humans and why we tend to tell the kinds of stories that we do. What are some of the factors that we see in a story that tend to grab our attention and grab our interest? And one of the things I like about this book is it talked about how humans, since we're social creatures, we're very much interested in hierarchy. We're very much interested in power and struggles for power. And so it made me think of a story like A Song of Ice and Fire, aka A Game of Thrones, and how when I watch this show or I read the books, I'm always interested in what's happening between these different characters in their struggle for power. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, is this person going to get killed? Is this person going to win this competition? Is this person going to manipulate this other person and gain power that way? And so because we're social creatures, this book argues that one of the things that we find intriguing in stories is the status dynamics of who's in power, who's trying to get the power, who's going to overthrow who. If there's like in Lord of the Rings, like some dark lord, or in Star Wars where there's some empire and we have people trying to overthrow those people, that immediately triggers our social minds and we're immediately interested in what's going on. But that's just one of the things that this book talks about. This book gives a lot of interesting insights into what kinds of stories tend to resonate with us and what we find interesting about them. And so if you're wanting to understand the science of storytelling a bit more, check this book out. And storytelling is very important in the modern world. Lots of brands, lots of marketing, a lot of it's telling a story. And so if you're in business, if you're in industry, understanding the ability to storytell is a very valuable skill that's going to be useful throughout your career. And so this book, if you're trying to learn more about storytelling and human nature, this is definitely a book worth checking out. Also, if you're interested in things like creative writing or making plays or films, this is a book you're going to want to check out as well. The fourth book on this list is a book called Either Or by Soren Kierkegaard. Now, by far, of all the books I'm recommending today, and probably up there in terms of all the books I've ever read, this book is really difficult. So if you're going to read this book, you're going to have to do what I did, and you're going to have to go on YouTube and the internet to try to understand what this guy is talking about. But I often believe that even some difficult books, if you can get through them, sometimes they have a rewarding message or something that you can get from that book that's rewarding despite the struggle of having to read it. And there were times, like multiple times in this book, I was reading and I was struggling. I was like, dang, like I was struggling. But overall, the ideas in this book are pretty cool. And the thing I admire most about this book is the author's creativity, right? So this guy, Soren Kierkegaard, he was like a 18th century philosopher. And this book is all about relationships and love and marriage. And in this book, I like his creativity because he writes it from the position of a fictional character, right? It's not a fictional book necessarily, but it's written by, he uses pseudonyms. A pseudonym is essentially where someone writes a book, for those of you that don't know, someone writes a book and they write as if they're someone else. They're pretending to be someone else and they're writing it from the position of this person's, worldview. And so this book starts off with this person who, they buy a desk, and then once they buy this desk, there's this one locked little drawer that they can't get open, but one day they're pissed off and they kick the desk and the drawer opens up. And this person finds these two sets of papers. One set of papers is written by someone named A, like the letter A. We don't get their names. We get the names of the second person. And the second list of papers is written by someone named B. But we find out eventually their name is Judge Wilhelm, right? But the point being is that there's these two collections of papers written by two different authors. And this person finds these authors in the desk that they bought. And in A's paper, A is basically talking about the struggle of life, the struggles of living in the world, how people have a hard time finding meaning in their life. And ultimately, the way that A finds meaning in his life is through seduction. It's through having a, promiscuous dating life. And granted, this book is written in like 18th century Copenhagen, but you can take some of the ideas in this book and you can transfer it to the modern day, right? So the first person, A, they find meaning in their life through seduction. And there's actually a really interesting part of this book called The Seducer'S Diary, where you kind of go into the mind of the seducer and they're kind of documenting their, it's like semi-creepy, right? But they're like documenting their in like a journal or like in a diary, they're like documenting how they're seducing this person slowly and surely. But the point is that A believes that the way to bring some meaning to your life, the way that you can be fulfilled as a person, is through seduction and engaging in the feeling and the sensation of successfully seducing someone and then successfully getting rid of them and kind of going from person to person, right? And kind of enjoying that feeling and that sensation of doing that. Then the second person, B, we find out that they're actually a judge named Judge Wilhelm. This person, he's actually read the papers written by A, and he's writing in response to A. And Judge Wilhelm, or the B, he is married and he has a family. And for him, he actually thinks that A is thinking in a juvenile way. And he says, essentially, once you get to a point in your life where you become married, that's the real way that you find fulfillment. That's the real way that you bring meaning to your life as an individual. And you transcend that tantalizing feeling or you transcend that feeling of, the kind of fun that you have seducing people back and forth and from person to person. You transcend that feeling with marriage, because with marriage you merge yourself to someone else and you become a part of something bigger than yourself as an individual. And being a part of something bigger than yourself as an individual is what gives your life purpose and fulfillment. And so this book, you know, Kierkegaard isn't saying that A is wrong and B is right. It's really just an investigation into relationships and how we use relationships as a way to find fulfillment in our life. And so, once again, it's a very, very difficult book. I had to use YouTube and Google because there's people on YouTube who explain this book, who talk about this book. There's articles on Google that can help you understand this book. So I would highly recommend that you use the internet to help you navigate this book. It's a really thick read in terms of like, he just writes for paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs in really dense language. So it is difficult, but overall, it can be a rewarding read if you put forth the effort to make your way through it. And I actually really enjoyed this. I could see myself rereading little bits and pieces. I already have started like rereading like little bits and pieces, like little chapters here and there. It's really good. And if you're willing to go through the difficult work of reading it, I would recommend it. And then the last book I'm talking about today is The Return of the King, which is part of Lord of the Rings, obviously. You know, I've talked about the previous two books on this channel before. I made videos talking about them. And this is the third book. I read this one, and it's been a long time since I read this book, and it's my favorite of the three. I think that it's a great novel, great imagination, great scope, great stakes. I think that the characters grow throughout this trilogy, and here is really where you really see the, I guess, manifestation of who these characters have become throughout the journey. And so, you know, Lord of the Rings in general, if you're looking for a good adventure story, I know some people find Tolkien's writing to be dense and difficult to work through. He gets very descriptive. But I've gotten to the point as a Lord of the Rings fan where I've read it enough times where I don't mind all that description. I feel like I'm getting the details of Middle-earth. Middle-earth is such a complex world that it feels so real when Tolkien begins to describe it in the way that he does with the detail, the level of detail that he does. But yeah, this book is my favorite of the trilogy. Highly recommend it. And yeah. So overall, these are the 5 books that I really enjoyed the most while I took my break from making content. I have read some other books. Maybe I'll talk about them. But those were the 5 ones that I really wanted to outline in a little return to YouTube video that I was going to do. So I hope that if you're interested in reading any of these books and you do read them, leave a comment in this video in the comment section just letting me know what you thought about the books, if you enjoyed them, if you didn't enjoy them, maybe you thought, I don't know why you recommended this book, I didn't enjoy it. Let me know what you think if you read any of them. And if you liked this video, leave a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, you know the deal. Anyway, that's it for today's video, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.